wants to do something that he wants to do. No, he wants to redeem and bless the world. So we have a choice to make. Are we going to go God's way, or are we going to go our own way? Are we going to accept what God is doing and His wonderful purposes, or are we going to accept what our purposes are in terms of creating world peace? It's a little bit of a biblical story, but I think it goes to the heart of the way Christians look at it, because Christians are struggling to understand Israel. They don't know how to deal with it. It's a political issue, but they know somehow it's also a biblical issue. But biblically they're confused. And I think there's a lot of work to do in order to renew this understanding of the Jewishness of the Christian faith at its heart.
Yeah. I fundamentally agree with exactly what you're saying, that the Christians need to understand the Jewish roots of their faith if we're going to stand with Israel and the Jewish people, because we're living in dark and dangerous times, and it's vital that really Christians do stand with Israel and the Jewish people. Yoel, I just want to bring you into this one, really. It's quite amazing to think that it was only 3 years after the Shoah, the Holocaust, in which the Jewish state emerged really from the ashes of the Holocaust. And now there is a Jewish state. What role does Israel play in protecting vulnerable Jewish communities around the world? And what is it like for the Jewish people to finally say they have a homeland after 2,000 years?
I think that we've reached a point where we almost, but only almost, take it for granted that there is a Jewish state, a homeland for the Jewish people, a safe haven. But of course we don't take it for granted, and I think that we cannot, because we know what the challenges are and what Israel detractors are trying to say. But the fact of the matter remains that Israel is a Jewish state. It was established as a homeland for the Jewish people. And I can tell you as an Israeli diplomat that still every year when we get our priorities for the next coming year, and this figures very highly among our first and foremost priorities, what to promote in our diplomatic routine, namely the development and further and maintenance of our relations with Jewish communities overseas. That's of utmost importance to us, and of course the fight against anti-Semitism, which unfortunately remains something that has to be done relentlessly, because anti-Semitism keeps raising its ugly head in many situations, in many places, including in Europe, unfortunately, despite of the lessons of the Holocaust. We see anti-Semitic trends sometimes being, underneath, or take cover under anti-Israeli arguments and criticism, and what we do is try to expose that. Of course, not every criticism of Israel should be branded as anti-Semitic. That wouldn't be true as well, and it will be counterproductive. But certainly a great deal of the criticism emanates from this type of outlook, of ideology. And we have to be very, very wary about this type of attack or criticism on Israel. There is a blurring of distinctions sometimes, and this confusion that was touched on before, between what is political, what is religious, what is national, what is ethnic, sometimes serves our detractors very well, because it's very convenient for them to attack an Israeli because they're Jewish, because they're the Jews, but to say it's for ideological reasons. It's very convenient to attack a Jew abroad in Europe as saying it's because of Israel. So, and this is very dangerous, and we have to warn against that. We have to do everything that we can to counter these very worrying trends.
And Angie, I just want to bring you into our next discussion, really. And this was an interesting article. It's entitled "US Preparing for a Post-Israel Middle East." I think it featured in the Foreign Affairs Journal, really saying that there was a report that's been issued by 16 US intelligence agencies, in which they're saying that Israel is the fundamental problem in terms of their relationship with the Islamic and Arab world. How dangerous do you believe this document is in terms of souring relations between Israel and the United States and implications for the European Union?
Well, I'm not sure if I know the document. I don't know quite where it's at in terms of its official status. But I think the issues you're talking about are issues that are bubbling under the surface in America now for a long time, and that is, you know, how far can you go in terms of supporting Israel when the whole of the Middle East is claiming that that is a problem? You know, they have this incredible conflict, really, of interest. The problem that I see in this kind of thing is, again, giving in to expediency. And it's also very naive. I mean, I don't think, from what I've read of the report you're talking about, they don't necessarily understand the negative forces that are at work in the Middle East. We talk of the Arab Spring, but in terms of Israel and the West, I think we're talking of an Arab winter. The Muslim Brotherhood, for example, which is gaining power now in so many countries through the Middle East, their whole objective is to re-establish the Islamic Caliphate sooner or later. They have no place for Israel. It's not about the West Bank. It's not about Gaza. It's about Israel as a Jewish state. It's about the existence of the Jewish people in Israel. And again, America has a choice. You know, do they support the idea of the Jewish people having a rightful place and a homeland in the Middle East or not? That's the price they're going to have to pay. And you know, they have to decide: are they willing to pay the price to support Israel at the expense of the support of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamic forces in the Middle East?
And Neil, I just want to bring you in on this one. We know that America has been such a strong and supportive ally of Israel, based on shared values and also based on national interests, security interests as well. The one thing that troubles me with this report is there seems to be a blindness, whether it's in the United States or whether it's here in the European Union, to the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood and extreme Islamist movements that are taking power in the Middle East. Is Europe fully aware of the dangers that the Muslim Brotherhood pose to European security?
Well, first about the report itself, I'm not familiar with it personally. I didn't see the report, and quite frankly, I'm not sure. I think we have to be quite clear about the circumstances of the commission of this report, its publication, and the way it's viewed. So I wouldn't want to relate to this report specifically. Generally speaking, currently, I don't see any major problem that puts in jeopardy our very strong relationship with the United States. It remains our first and foremost ally in the world, and I don't see this changing anytime soon. And this relationship has been very strong during the current administration as well as the previous one and one before it, whether Democratic or Republican. So I would put differences that we may have, and we have differences between Israel and the U.S. in the right context, and see them in the right proportions, and not blow them out of proportion, and see them as a major crisis in relations or something that puts them in jeopardy. Having said that, of course, we are very concerned about what's going on all around us. Some compared it to an earthquake. Others said, okay, the world around us has changed. And we have major concerns about our neighborhood. And we are also cautious about that. We wouldn't want to jump to conclusions. It may be easier to do it from afar, but when you're right in the middle of things, You want to sometimes wait and see where things are going, and the fact that you have this rise of political Islam in a way is a fact in many of the countries surrounding us, and we have to see what the implications are, how to adapt to this changing reality. We are aware of a lot of the risks as well, a lot of the dangers, naturally, and we bring them up in our conversations with our interlocutors, also in Europe. I think that the Europeans tend to see the developments in our region in a slightly overly optimistic way, but I think this has been recalibrated over time. I think the fact that you had what was perceived as a democratic wave and a new opportunity for human rights and other values that the Europeans hold dear compel the Europeans to support these trends with full strength. And if you combine that with a sense of responsibility for having dealt with autocratic and dictatorial regime for so many years before the so-called Arab Spring, then it compounded this European approach. But I wouldn't underestimate the ability of Europeans to analyze the situation. I think that there are enough people also here in Brussels that understand that this is far from being a simple case of democratic transition that is going to be over in 1 or 2 years. This is a long process. It's going to take time. Democracy is not just holding elections. It's much more than that. It's a whole set of values. It's a deep belief in human rights and freedom of expression and belief and many other fundamental freedoms that all together make up what democracy is, and this is something that is going to be a long process. But we are there, and we still want to. We hold our hand for peace to our neighbors as today, as before, as always. We hold dear our peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan. We want to keep them as they are, and develop our relations with countries around us with which we don't have relations right now. Today as before. But of course, taking into consideration all the concerns and perceived risks and dangers from this situation in flux. I think and this brings me back, if you like, to what we talked about before, and the importance of asserting Israel's character and identity in the region, because this is something that unfortunately is still not taken for granted by our neighbors. I think it's very important for us to demand from our neighbors, and first and foremost from our Palestinian neighbors, to be straight about one thing: what they mean when they talk about a two-state solution. Because when we talk about a two-state solution, we are very clear about what we mean. We mean an Arab state, namely a Palestinian state, and a Jewish state. But I would really invite Palestinian representatives to come forth and say that in those same words, because they will not, and they would not, and they do not do that, which really undermines and erodes the level of confidence that we need to have in order to move forward in the peace process. One final point, perhaps, about developments in the region. I think that if anything, they proved something that we have been claiming all along, that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, albeit a very fundamental and important one in the region, one that has to be solved in a sustainable, fair manner, etc., is certainly not the only problem or only issue to be dealt with in the region. There are so many other issues, and quite frankly, it's not the situation in the West Bank or Gaza that brought ordinary Egyptian civilians out to Tahrir Square. So, and this is something, again, that we need to pay attention to, we need to emphasize that and repeat, because sometimes people tend to forget and they go back to the old narrative of okay, Israel has to do A, B, and C, and has to it's as if, you know, all the responsibilities upon Israel to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and then as a matter of you know, as a miracle, all other problems will be solved and everything will fall into place, which is far from the truth.
Yeah, and Charlotte, I mean, it seems to me, this is my impression, that so many of our European leaders are very short-sighted when it comes to dealing with issues to do with the Middle East. There is an obsession with a focus of condemning Israel, and yet there's very little condemnation about the brutality of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria. There isn't discussions in our media and our newspapers about really what's happening in Egypt with the Muslim Brotherhood coming to power, particularly President Mohamed Morsi, and the persecution, the clampdown on democratic freedoms in Egypt. Do you believe that European leaders need to look at really the Islamist nature of what's happening behind the Arab Spring to understand that Israel is not the problem in the Middle East, but Israel's the solution?
Yeah, I like the question, but I'm not sure I'm the one that will give you the complete answer, but certainly you are right in saying that leaders are short-sighted, that's for sure. What I want to tell you is that I brought so many journalists to Israel in my career as a PR for Israeli companies, and I had to witness the cultural, what I call the cultural shock when they arrived in Israel, because they discovered a normal country that they did not expect because of all the propaganda that they were eating here before going to Israel. And I can only invite people to go to Israel and witness this country where you feel a democracy, where you feel multicultural, multilingual, and multi-religious atmosphere in a very peaceful way. So I have seen this for all my life. And so I'm quite shocked by the way Israel is presented. I mean, I cannot stand it, not only because I'm concerned by Israel and I'm close to Israel, but also because I'm a PR person. And because I know the tools that are being used in our profession, and there is a professional ethic in our PR profession. We cannot just do anything and say anything. We have to check facts, we have to tell the truth, we have to be fair, we have to, etc. And here I see that in the communication, blaming Israel, I mean, it's just so big. And Goebbels said, the bigger the lie, the better it will go through. And we are in this game. I call it a game, but I hope that there will be a miracle in the next days, that everything will remain quiet, and Ahmadinejad will wake up some morning and will say to himself, what am I so much dealing with Israel? I have so many other things to do in my country with my people. I don't know. That, you know, so simple reaction, human reaction. We have to deal with very complicated communication background concerning the Middle East, and it has been covering the whole world to manipulate, in my opinion, the public opinion worldwide, and see the Palestinians as victims and the Israelis as aggressors. And this is amazing caricature that I cannot stand, because here we go, a wonderful country that I invite everybody to go and visit, even in the difficult, sweatful period. You will be amazed, amazed. I feel very sorry for the Israelis who have to go and get a gas mask because of the tension. And I've lived this. I was in Israel the day before the war in Iraq started. And I can tell you that there was such a stress in the country. And the day after, America's went into Iraq. It was 2003, 2004, you know better. Three. And, but there was such a tension before, the day before, we thought, okay, something is going to happen. And in the end, we were saved, in my opinion. Israel was saved by America those days. Nobody tells it in the press. I felt it while I was in the country. I wanted to tell you this.
Well, which is good. I just want to move on to our final issue, which is probably the biggest foreign policy issue of our generation, and that is the issue of the Islamic Republic of Iran and Iran's nuclear weapons program. And Yoel, I know you're going to give the standard Israeli diplomatic line probably on this one, but firstly, how dangerous is it for Israel, for Iran to acquire nuclear weapons? And secondly, how close do you believe Iran is to actually acquiring those nuclear weapons?
Oh, very, very dangerous and very close, to answer both of your questions in a nutshell. But the danger that the Iranian nuclear program poses is complex. It comprises different elements. It can have many different ramifications, and not all of them have to do with Israel. If, for example, a nuclear arms race is launched in the region after Iran reaches nuclear capability, other local powers wanting to gain the same status, racing to master military nuclear technology as well, then the whole region will encounter instability. The whole balance of deterrence, many other questions. But of course, from Israel's point of view, the threat is clear. We see this, I would call it a toxic combination of rhetoric calling for erasing Israel off the map with an advanced military nuclear program, and that was documented by reports of the IAEA, not just by the statements of Israeli politicians, and combined with Holocaust denial and a very active ballistic missile program. So you put all these elements together, and you get the huge perceived threat that we see in front of us, a clear and present danger, if you like. And so this explains why you open a newspaper or an internet news portal these days. So you read a lot of analysis about this Iranian file. So this is what's on people's minds, and that's obvious. But by the way, the international community as well, because it didn't always used to be this way. Back in the day, when I was starting as a diplomat, I think Israel was one of the only countries talking about the potential of a nuclear Iran or a nuclear Iranian threat. Whereas today, I think the international community is much more clearly, much more minded to the issue. The fact that we've seen all these rounds of sanctions being imposed on Iran by the US, by the EU, and some strong measures that have been taken, goes to show that many other actors in the international community perceive of a nuclear Iran as a huge threat. Again, not only to Israel, but to regional stability, regional security, and world security.
And Andrew, you're an expert really in international law. How is it that a leader like Iran, like President Ahmadinejad, is invited to the UN General Assembly, the UN, where he's able to incite racial hatred against Israel and the Jewish people? He's able to incite genocide and actually denies the Holocaust. How is the UN and international organizations allowing him to have a platform if the world is going to learn anything from the horrors of the Holocaust?
Well, I think your question, in a sense, gives the answer. The UN is a political institution. International law is also something that's in the hands of the states who make international law. But the UN has become a kind of a platform where politics determines what happens, and not law. And that's why I think, you know, it's expediency that he's allowed to be there. I'm not an expert on, you know, geopolitical things or on the Iranian issue, nuclear threat, but what I do know is that, and I think we need to just remind ourselves of this, God is in control of what's going on. We mustn't lose perspective or lose hope for what's going on today with Israel. Iran today, it might be another nation tomorrow. The threats are there all around the place, but it's because God is in control that this is happening. And I think we need to take comfort in that and strength. This is not something theoretical or abstract, it's a reality that we who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob must hang on to, that he is going to look after his people. But it's a time of choice. It's a wake-up call for us as individuals, and it's a wake-up call for the nations.
Yeah, we're down to about 4 minutes left of the programme, so I just want to sum. Charlotte, you know, you are the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. Surely it's harrowing when you see a leader like Iran call for the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people. Even the supreme leader of Iran, Khomeini, has sanctioned religious edicts in which he's called for the destruction of Israel.
In my opinion, it's I'm going back to propaganda because this is my subject. And in Berlin, in the 30s, my father always told me, not always because he spoke very late, he used to tell